here at the Embedded Group with Scott Davis, and you just want to talk to us a little bit about embedded devices and where things are going in the future.
Absolutely. What we're looking at, we have a launch coming up for a new release of Windows Embedded 6.0. That's in Tokyo next week. What has come about with this launch is that we've, as a group, been taking a hard look at what's going on in the embedded market space itself, where that's going. And that's why I called you and wanted to talk to you about some of the ideas. I think they're very interesting and would be particularly interesting to your audience.
So how far out do we look at Microsoft?
We're going to be looking at about 7 to 8 years.
Cool.
As what's going on. And this is the trends in the industry in general. It's not just where we're going, although we're positioning our products to be in line with where devices are going in the future.
How do they determine where things are going to go, or what trends are?
It's actually pretty straightforward. If you look at the history of what's been happening in computing in general, and then put that on top of what the history has been with embedded devices, there are clear trends that you can see. And it doesn't take too much to start folding over and going, okay, what would be the next step? What would be the next step?
Cool. And what do we have here today? What are we going to look at?
Well, the first thing is, when I talk about embedded devices, I know that's not a term that's used in the consumer industry that much. An embedded device is any device that has an embedded computing system that is dedicated to a single function.
And embedded meaning it's on a chip?
Exactly. It's inside. It has its own operating system. It's running some instruction set. So at home you have, I think you have the world's fastest computer.
Right? It might be close.
Right,
yeah.
right. Your internet machine is what you called it.
Yes,
right.
My internet machine.
And that's a general computing device, right? It's meant to do a lot of different things. If you look at a phone, for example, this is mine. It's meant to be a phone, but it has a camera in it. It has so I can do email.
Web browser,
yeah, exactly.
email, everything.
But those items are dedicated. This is what this phone is meant to do. And inside there is a processor. There's RAM. There's storage. Very similar to your computer at home. And it's also mobile and much smaller. Everyone has their world filled with embedded devices. We're talking about your, if you have a set-top box, for example. We have Comcast here, so I have a Comcast box with a DVR.
Yeah.
That's an embedded device. You likely have a thermostat at home. Now, if you pop off the cover and you don't see a little vial filled with mercury that pops back and forth to turn it on and off, but it's digital, that's an embedded device. Your ATM is an embedded device. Your alarm clock, your phone, your MP3 player, these are all embedded devices. So the first wave of embedded devices were really going from the straight mechanical to a computing device, some sort of intelligence going on. And I mentioned the thermostat. That's probably a good example that most people grew up with is if you did pop off the top, you would have seen a glass vial full of mercury, and it moved back and forth. It was purely mechanical. As we move from that to moving to a solid-state, circuit-based, computing-based device world, the first processors that came in were very slow. They were 4-bit, 8-bit processors. The instruction sets were very limited. The amount of input, the user interface you could expect was very limited. Now, once that moved over into the next phase, we moved to what we call smart devices. And that's, if you look at your VCR, that's a good example. It moved from being a tape-based machine where you put it in and had to set the channel. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they tried to improve the user interface over time. They tried to make it smarter to anticipate how humans work with the device. Now, these devices would both be considered smart. These are remote straight from my house. This is what comes with my TV, the cable box. I think most people are aware of something similar to this. Now, if I wanted to input instructions into this, I can. It's programmable so that I can control my TV and my VCR, my cable, all in one.
Yeah.
It's not exactly intuitive.
It's not.
Yeah, if I sit this down and say, figure it out, you would have a little trouble. This would still be considered a beginning edge smart device. Now, if you move through time, you see the natural evolution of something like this. Now, this isn't that expensive. It's the, who makes this? The Logitech, yeah. And you can see now the user interface has become much more intuitive. It says watch TV, watch your DVR, go look the computers. I have my computer hooked up to the TV.
Yeah.
Watch the computer. It does a lot more. The processing power is greater here. So that's just the beginning of the trend that you're starting to see in smart devices. The processing power is getting larger. Now the next thing that we moved into, and that's the wave that we're in now, is these devices became connected. At first it was a tethered connection, so they could start exchanging information, and then they got IP addresses. And that's where we are now. And if you look at something like a Zune is a good example of that. The MP3 players that came before it were connected in terms of you hooked up via USB to your computer. You could download information. It was smart. It had heavier processing power than those that came before it. It had an intuitive interface. But the connected allowed you to get away from being tied to just a specific experience contained within the device.
Yeah.
Now, if you move that one step further to what you're starting to see right now, the edge of what you're seeing when in the smart connected devices right now, the devices themselves are moving away from being the focal point of what you're looking at. I'll give you an example. MP3 players, when they first came out, and there were more MP3 players before Apple and Microsoft got into the market than there are now. What was the major features that you were competing on? Storage was the biggest one.
Yeah.
The number of things that the device could do. Could it have a voice recorder in it? Did it have radio in it? I mean, it just went on and on. The number of things that they were jamming into there, and they weren't very friendly. They weren't centered on the music experience itself.
Yeah.
And then you take where we are today. The two major players in the market, and I'll use Zune because we're Microsoft, and that's easy for me. They've moved from the idea of the device being the entire focal point of what you're doing to the experience of what you're doing being into the focal point. All right, the user experience. So I listen to music. All right, how do I do that? I have music on my computer. I want to share that music with people. I want to sync that music with my other computers that I have and with my portable device that I have. I want to find music. I want to buy it. And when I buy it, I want it to spread out through the devices that I have. I don't want to think about...
You want to be able to listen all over your house,
right,
in your car.
Right. I want to listen to music. I don't want a device that I have to go figure out, okay, how do I listen to music here, and then go to another device and go, okay, how do I listen to music here? The focus has moved away from the device to my experience as a music listener. And you can see other examples of that beginning to happen. And that is when I talk about the evolution of devices, this is the next wave that's coming. And this is being made possible by, again, higher processing power. So again, they're moving up and in the speed with which they can process, and they're getting smaller. So the battery life to the power ratio is changing.
And wireless plays a part in that?
That's the other thing. So if you look at the smart and the connected, you'll see that now the boundaries are being broken of what you can do and where you can be when you're doing that.
So now we're starting to get a better picture of why wireless was put in the first Zune, and for it wasn't just sharing things with people. And
right, exactly, and that's actually the point of when we talk about the On 10 audience. I've been involved for 2 years now. I know that the audience is intelligent as far as understanding what's going on in the marketplace. What's interesting to me about this is, in this group now, I'm getting a broader vision of what's going on in the trends of why the market is moving in the direction it's going to, and the evolution of devices that are likely to happen. You taking pictures, for example, cameras. Right now, you're still competing in cameras largely on features. What's the next 10 megabyte pixel monstrosity that I need to have?
Yeah.
How many chips does it have into it? How many, what's